Hello, class, and welcome once again to another thrilling week here at Beetle University. I, of course, am Professor Moptop, and as always, thank you all a million times, again and again and again and again. This week, you're going to be getting 3 hunks of audio in your mail, and it's all about a George Harrison song from the Let It Be album. The song is called I Me Mine, and it's all about discovering one's ego. During his acid years, George discovered all about the ego and how it's rarely satisfied, and all that you could want you will never achieve. Well, a couple years later, on January 7th of 1969, after kind of a bickery day recording with the Beatles, George went home and wrote a song. You'll hear all the details about the Austrian television show he was watching, which inspired the heavy waltz that I Me Mine was to become. George and Ringo were the first ones there on the 8th of January, 1969, and George played it for Ringo. He didn't really care much for the song. He didn't think it was great. He had no problem giving it to the Beatles. He also said that you could record it or not. It didn't really matter to him. He was saving his best stuff for his debut album, which of course was All Things Must Pass. Now, throughout these sessions, the other Beatles were extremely distracted. As hard as Paul tried to keep things flowing and productive, they would often get distracted and wind up screwing around. You hear this as they're singing about Harry Pinsker. Moptop will tell you all about that. John Lennon would lose interest real quickly in anything that wasn't a John Lennon song, and you hear some of the audio from the Let It Be session tapes where John is just not playing cooperatively with George. They only played it on this one day, but there's the part where John and Yoko are slow dancing, so they selected it for the film. So therefore, it would make sense to have that in the on the soundtrack as well. It was on the Get Back album, which Glyn Johns selected, but it was kind of an unofficial rehearsal sort of a version of the song. They knew that they needed to rework it. Well, Alan Klein was the guy who knew that they needed to make some money back. They'd spent a lot of money on film and the lighting people and all the people involved in the Let It Be sessions. So they had to make some money, because otherwise they would have just lost a whole lot of money, which of course is bad business. After the sessions were done, they recorded Abbey Road, and they weren't really sure what they were going to do. Well, it was eventually apparent that they were going to need a better recording. So George, Paul, and Ringo would record I Me Mine with George Martin producing, and this would become the last session that involved more than one Beatle. In January, they recorded it. On April 1st, Ringo played along with an orchestral, he played along with the orchestra for the overdub, which included recordings for The Long and Winding Road, Let It Be, and Across the Universe. Phil Spector added the strings and horns, and he extended the song with a very clever edit, making I Me Mine much longer than it already was. As we've said before, John was extremely pleased with all the changes that Phil Spector would make on the Let It Be album. George thought they were fantastic. It was Paul who did not think much of the changes that Phil Spector added to them. You'll hear Professor Moptop talking in great detail about the edit, which made the song much longer than it actually was. Phil Spector was a very good producer, even though he had some personal demons. It might not be George Harrison's best song, but like I said, at the time, he wasn't very interested in being a Beatle, and he was really focusing on what his debut album was going to be. He wanted to save his really, really good songs for that, and anything else that if they wanted it for Let It Be, fine. If not, he didn't really care either much. George had a little bit of a bad attitude in 1969 as a member of the Beatles. And with that, we're going to say so long for another thrilling week here at Beetle U. Keep an eye out in your mailbox. I'll be sending you stuff shortly. Actually, you've already gotten it. I'm Professor Moptop. Have yourself a good week.